A new age is upon us, Ravens. Gone is our home of Nerve's Concord, and in its place is Global Cortex, the nest for Ravens. Welcome to Fireside Gaming. I'm Billum, and with Armored Core 3 comes a new generation of games set in an all-new timeline. At least that's what it says on paper. I'm still not sold on AC3 being a full reboot of the series, but we can get more into that whenever we talk about the story later in this video. Armored Core 3 is a game that I have a long history with, but have never beaten. Like many of the other PS2 AC games, I was exposed to it thanks to my small town's movie and game rental shop. I played it a bit, but not as much as Armored Core 2 or Another Age. I tried to give the game a proper playthrough whenever I picked up my own copy shortly before the launch of this channel, but I didn't finish that attempt either, getting 19 missions in before stopping. Considering my playthrough for this review was my third attempt at beating Armored Core 3, I was starting to wonder if it was cursed and I was never going to get through it. Especially when I took a break for a couple of weeks and had a hard time getting back into the game, and then again when my PS2 disk drive started making loud clicking sounds near the end of the game. Fortunately, I keep a backup hard drive with PS2 games on it, and AC3 was among them. I used that to finish out my last few missions, and then I started the long process of backing up my entire PS2 collection while I wait to order a replacement disk drive. I guess it's a good thing I'm focused on indie games this year, huh? Or maybe I could show some other consoles some love. Listen, I don't mean to review so many PlayStation games, but the PS2 is my favorite console and turn-based RPGs are my favorite genre. So that kinda just sets me up to play a lot of PlayStation games, completely unintentionally. And truthfully, why wouldn't you want to? This era of games is filled to the brim with advancements that are incredibly fun to experience and track. Case in point are the changes made to the gameplay of Armored Core 3. While we still don't have true dual analog controls, and I'm still not bothered by that in the least, FromSoft did introduce some interesting changes with its leap into a new generation of AC games. Easily the coolest feature added in Armored Core 3 is the ability to jettison weapons. Anytime during a fight, the player can drop the weapon they currently have equipped, including extensions. Doing so lowers the weight of the AC, making it faster and reducing its energy drain. That alone is neat, but where this ability really shines is in the arena. While doing the EX arena, I would often take in an AC that was overweight due to its massive back weapons. Doing so allowed me to hammer the enemy with a few shots from these powerful weapons, drop them to lower my weight to a more manageable amount, and continue the fight with fast-paced combat. Combine this with the lightweight MWG MG-1000 machine gun and you have an incredibly powerful weapon combination on your hands. In fact, you can blow through most of the arena and EX arena with little to no challenge using this method. Granted, you do have to be careful to not spam the button combination to drop weapons. I did that a couple of times on accident, leaving me with just my laser blade to finish the fight with, and that didn't often go well for me. Interestingly, players can also pick up weapons dropped during combat, but only in specific cases. Near the end of the Armored Core 3 manual, it mentions being able to do this in the arena and versus mode. I never saw a way to turn this feature on in the arena, but I did jump into a quick versus match to test it out. It's a neat idea, and one that I would have loved to have seen in solo play, but I understand how it could have been difficult to implement. A highly mobile AC could just drop heavy shoulder weapons, kite the enemy around the arena, return to the weapons, and get a couple of shots off before repeating. That would really break the game, so I understand why it's only in versus mode. Outside of the jettison feature, there have been a few other changes in Armored Core 3. For example, Human Plus is gone. In its place is OP Intensify, an optional part obtained for free from the shop after beating the game. And I have to laugh about the fact that it's OP Intensify, like overpowered, even though it's just optional part. Just one of those funny ways that things can change meanings with the way language changes. OP Intensify doesn't do anything on its own. Instead, players have to unlock unique abilities for it by performing certain tasks during missions or arena battles with it equipped. Some of these extra abilities include enhanced radar function and booster performance, quicker turning, more cooling power, eliminating the need to crouch when firing certain back-mounted weapons, and a handful of others, mostly the same stuff that Human Plus would offer. Personally, I prefer OP Intensify over Human Plus as it acts as a reward for players who beat the game and put in the extra time to gain new abilities. My biggest problem with Human Plus has always been the fact that it rewards players for performing poorly. And to be clear, I don't hate Human Plus, on paper. I just think it gets abused by players who purposefully do bad to gain the extra abilities. When used properly, I believe that it is a neat mechanic for decreasing the difficulty for struggling players. I just really don't care for the mentality of gaining those extra abilities through purposeful poor performance. It cheapens the experience of what an Armored Core game is, and it isn't in the spirit of the mechanic. Another change worth noting is the new core ability named Exceed Orbit, which grants funnel-like weapons instead of Overboost, though plenty of cores still come with Overboost. Personally, Exceed Orbit wasn't really my thing, and I stuck with Overboost 99% of the time. Speaking of core abilities, the limiter release ability from Armored Core 2 and Another Age is gone. Considering how unadvertised that ability was, it wasn't really a big deal that it was removed, especially considering some of the other alterations in Armored Core 3. What's also interesting is AC3's consort feature. With this, players are sometimes offered extra funds from employers that they can use to hire additional help or keep for a bigger payout. This is a great addition to the game, and it really helps the other pilots stand out more. You build this kind of camaraderie with them, even getting emails when some of them move up from being MT pilots to fellow Ravens. It's a fun addition and also plays into a major change for the arena. Armored Core 3 features the normal arena that players are already familiar with. However, there's also the EX arena that is unlocked after beating the game. While you might think to skip the EX arena as it's just a bonus, I would advise against it. It's not the same experience as the original, instead featuring 2v2 matches. Players get to pick their ally for each match, with Valkyrie being my go-to wingman. One thing to note is that players don't have to defeat both of the enemy ACs in the arena. They only have to take down the leader, which also means that the match ends if the player goes down before their ally. This adds a fair bit of strategy to the EX arena. That's especially true in the later matches when both enemy ACs will ignore your ally attempting to take you out and end the match as fast as possible. And now we get to the biggest change in Armored Core 3, the difficulty. First off, AC3 has normal and hard modes available. I went with normal for this playthrough as I figured hard mode would be much more punishing than I wanted to deal with. However, I have to note that this is the easiest AC game I've played yet. That's not to say that there aren't parts that are challenging, such as some of the top arena battles, but the main story only offers limited difficulty. I was able to breeze through it fairly easily, including the last mission. This was strange to me, as oftentimes I find myself having to retry the final missions in Armored Core games several times before beating them. This time, it took me a grand total of 3, and by that third time I'd figured out the enemy pattern so well that it wasn't even hard. I can't help but wonder if FromSoft lowered the difficulty to compensate for the removal of Human Plus, while also offering hard mode for players seeking a more challenging experience. If so, I'd say it's a fair trade-off. It's also funny to me that AC3 is the easiest game yet, and it came out right after Another Age, which I believe to be the hardest of the AC games I've reviewed so far. And on a similar note, I think FromSoftware nailing the difficulty helps explain why Armored Core 3 is a fan favorite, as well as the best-selling game in the series before the release of Armored Core 6 Fires of Rubicon. It doesn't often hit players with moments that feel cheap or unfair, instead offering obstacles that are challenging and rewarding to overcome. Visually speaking, Armored Core 3 looks incredibly similar to its predecessors on the PS2. There haven't been any major changes in how the game looks, and that's perfectly fine by me. I remember when these games were coming out, the graphics as well as the gameplay were a frequent criticism for not evolving, but I just don't understand it. Also, AC3 does offer some interesting level variety, such as this fog-covered forest or the incredibly vertical levels set on a sunken ship. Turning to the audio, Armored Core 3 sports one of the best soundtracks in the series. Artificial Sky 4 and In My Heart are the standout tracks for me personally, but they are far from the only ones worth listening to. Your Doors, Bravado, Milk, and Below His Eyes are some of my other favorites. Actually, the whole soundtrack of AC3 is great. I keep it on my phone, and it, along with much of the other AC soundtracks from the PS1 and PS2 games, make up a playlist that I use when mowing, doing housework, or working on that D&D table I post about every once in a while. By the way, that is really close to being complete. I'm planning to do a longer video going over it once it's done. Also, as a smaller note, the voice acting this time around is an improvement over previous games. That's not to say that prior AC games had bad voice acting, but sometimes it was a bit stiff or even kinda campy at times. Of course, we can't talk about the reasons why Armored Core 3 is so loved without discussing its story. Consider that your spoiler warning, and head to the time on screen to avoid learning about the plot and setting of AC3. Armored Core 3 is very much a reimagining of Armored Core 1, with some very important differences to consider. Just like in AC1, AC3 features an event called the Great Destruction that forced humanity to flee underground cities to avoid its fallout. And just like in the first generation of games, corporations war against one another by hiring ravens to do their dirty work, all while an AI guides the fate of humanity with its logic and uncaring decision-making. I think you can probably understand why I might be of the opinion that we're not actually in a new timeline, but that's a discussion worth having once I reach the end of the Gen 3 games. Instead of Raven's Nest, we have Global Cortex, the home of ravens, and in place of 9-Ball is the controller, also known as Dove in the Japanese version of the game. We also don't live in Isaac City, instead taking shelter in an installation called Layered, which, as the name implies, is a collection of layered areas with different purposes, such as cities, environmental areas, power facilities, and more. And these humans live much better lives than their AC-1 counterparts. Layered is more advanced, even offering artificial skies that maintain the appearance of living on the surface. But that comes at a price. The controller is no 9-Ball. Instead of subtly guiding humanity from the background, the controller has integrated itself into every person's life. Humans cannot make their own decisions. Instead, they need approval from the controller for any major life changes. That's stifling, to say the least, and it has bred contempt among the controller in the form of the Union, a group of rebels that seek to end the controller's, control and return to the surface. Our place in all of this is as a new Raven who was granted permission by the controller to become one of the hardened mercenaries who was hired by corporations. And that's exactly what we do. 3 companies are at war throughout the events of Armored Core 3. Crest is one of the largest corporations in Layered and is a staunch supporter of the controller. It doesn't want anybody messing with the current system, putting it at odds with the Union and corporate rival Mirage. Mirage is the largest of the 3 corporations duking it out in Layered. Unlike Crest, it doesn't respect the controller's decisions, but rather its place of power. This has it seeking to take control of the artificial intelligence and use it for its own benefit. Kisaragi is the last of the major corporations in Layered. It's also the smallest of them. This vulnerable position has it taking a more neutral stance on the controller as it slowly builds its market share and waits for Crest and Mirage to whittle each other down with their constant conflicts. It may also have ties to bioweapons based on a couple of missions in this game. Throughout Armored Core 3, the Raven learns more about what's behind the conflicts of these corporations. Mainly, the Union believes that the controller is malfunctioning. It provides evidence in the form of hiccups in the system that maintain Layered, which have resulted in casualties. With Crest being a strong supporter of the controller, it isn't buying what Union is selling and directly works against the rebels. However, Mirage views the Union's plan to destroy the controller as a way to help it gain control of the AI. This has it secretly backing the Union's efforts in hopes that the rebels will weaken the defenses of the controller, allowing Mirage to sweep in and take over the system that runs Layered. When we become a Raven, Lane Myers is assigned as our liaison with Global Cortex. We also get a warning from the controller that our operations as a Raven must always be in support of maintaining order in Layered, and that any acts counter to these will result in the immediate termination of our right to act as a Raven. Like I said, the controller really doesn't mess around, and it weaves the largest threads of everyone's lives. In fact, even the current conflict that has humans turning against the controller appears to be another of its manipulations. The game doesn't outright say it, but it seems the controller is egging humanity's war against it on. There's even a mission where Crest, the biggest supporter of the controller, is attacked by the AI's forces, including a custom AC with specs and operations that are well beyond normal. It's unclear why this happens, but Crest blames Mirage for the attack, perhaps hoping to defend the controller's reputation and limiting rebellion against it. While there are plenty of normal missions for Ravens to take on, such as protecting a bridge in one mission only to destroy it a few missions later, a few others are similar to the one I just mentioned. The controller is clearly increasing its efforts against humanity, but never outright stops us from defending corporations from it. That's something that stuck out as odd to me. The controller makes it clear it won't stand for us disrupting Layered, but it also never revokes or attempts to revoke our right to act as a Raven. This is despite our direct actions against it. Though to be fair, even Global Cortex starts losing faith in the controller as the story progresses. Sectors being shut down, systems going offline, and other issues are becoming more frequent, eroding the utopia that is Layered. Things take a turn for the worse when Crest makes an attack on the Union's base. Things aren't looking good for the Union until a group of controller forces appear, dealing massive damage to both sides. These units then start appearing throughout Layered, causing chaos wherever they go. And it's not just corporations that suffer. These units are attacking essential parts of Layered's infrastructure, resulting in oxygen shortages, radiation leaks, and other severe problems. Crest hires us to protect it from the controller's attacks, but it's not enough, prompting the organization to surrender, and also admit that it knew the controller was malfunctioning for a long time. Thanks, Crest. Believing its destruction to be the controller's will, Crest accepts its fate. At the same time, Mirage bolsters its forces to defend against the controller, but as Lane notes, the situation is looking bleak. And it doesn't get much better. With increased defenses rallied, the controller starts bringing out the big guns in the form of a massive underwater weapon that we have to defeat. Without much choice left, Mirage hires us to explore ruins that are rumored to lead to the controller. However, this is a trap. Mirage believes we've become the largest threat to the controller, and it wants us eliminated. While Mirage has sought to control the controller, it doesn't want it destroyed, and it believes that this would bring about the end of Laird and its people. With the corporations against us, the Union has become our one ally. The rebels believe the controller must be destroyed no matter the effect it will have on Laird. To achieve this, it sends us into a Mirage facility where data on the controller's location is stored. We retrieve this, and the Union starts decoding the information. Following a desperate attempt by the controller to destroy Laird's energy reactor and another attack with a massive MT, the Union has discovered the location of the controller's core. With this final attack about to commence, even Lane starts to wonder if destroying the controller is the best course of action. It could drastically change the world, and it may not be the best for the people of Laird. But with casualties rising as the controller's attacks intensify, things clearly can't stay as they are now. As we infiltrate the Laird hub, Crest contacts us one last time, yet again expressing concerns about what will happen when the controller is no more. And yet we continue forward, sure of our decision. The controller attempts to stop us with a dual attack, sending out 2 of its ACs to battle us at once. While taking on 2 opponents at once is tricky, we manage to gain the upper hand, defeating the units and opening the way to the controller's core. With nothing left to protect it, we destroy the controller's core, and what happens next changes everything. The controller activates its final directive, granting humans access to the surface by opening the gates above Laird's artificial sky. What this means for humanity will be learned in Silent Line Armored Core. The story of Armored Core 3 is a fun twist on what starts as a rehash of Armored Core 1's plot, and there's a bit more going on beneath the surface that's worth mentioning. I got the feeling while playing the game that the controller isn't malfunctioning. Instead, it's taken the actions it has as a way to force humanity out of their complacent lives in Laird. The game doesn't outright say this, but it's alluded to with the controller's final words. And this gut instinct I had wasn't wrong. Thanks to the Armored Core 10 Works complete file, we basically know that this was the case. When discussing the story of Armored Core 3, it states, via Google Translate, some say that the administrators, this is the controller by the way, change of policy was due to a pre-planned program. According to this view, the administrator, having determined that the surface environment had been restored to a level suitable for human life, began to attack in order to test whether humanity had the strength to migrate from the underground to the surface. When the administrator was destroyed by humanity, the program was accomplished and humanity was restored to the surface. However, this is only one theory, and now that the administrator is gone, there is no way to uncover the truth. While this presents the controller secretly helping humanity return to the surface as a theory, I think it's safe to say that this is the way FromSoft intends the story to be interpreted. I'm looking forward to seeing where this story goes next. It almost feels like Armored Core 3 could be a standalone game, with the final scenes of reaching the surface acting as a payoff to the player. But I know that's only the start of a new timeline that includes Silent Line, Nexus, and Last Raven. Of those remaining games, I've only played Last Raven, and frankly, I never used to pay much attention to the story of AC games when I was younger. Yes, I know, that's my mistake. Before we go, I have to talk about the arena real quick. I already shared it as a separate video, but the way I took the top spot in the arena was hilarious to me. Ace, the Big Daddy champion of the arena, went out of bounds after blowing up my AC, unintentionally handing me a victory. This caught me so off guard, as I have never once seen an AI ring itself out in an Armored Core game, especially after winning the fight. And then we have the EX Arena, a new challenge with teams of 2 squaring off in an arena. Of course, Ace sits at the top of this arena as well, and surely there's no way he'd make the mistake of going out of bounds a second time, right? Wrong. This idiot yet again gave up in the middle of the fight, leaving the arena and giving me another easy victory. The fact that this happened once already was enough to blow my mind, but I was howling with laughter whenever it happened in the EX Arena. And Ace was the only AC I ever won against with a ring out. All of the other AIs clearly knew where the boundaries were. I'm not sure what Ace's problem is, and I can't deny it kind of feels like I don't deserve my wins. But I love the irony of the top-ranked AC pilot losing his position in the arena due to his own mistake, and not because of the skill of his rival. So you can bet I took those victories, and I didn't look back. Overall, Armored Core 3 is one of, if not the best game in the series. It's the most polished one of the games I've played for review, and is an easy starting point for anyone wanting to get into the series. The more balanced difficulty is also welcoming to newcomers, while still offering a fun experience for more battle-hardened Ravens. While I think it's the best the series has to offer yet, I don't know as if I would call it my favorite. I'm not really sure which one is, but maybe I'll figure that out by the time we're done with these Armored Core reviews. Thanks for checking out my review of Armored Core 3. I'll be returning to the Year of the Indie for a bit after this to help clear out my Steam backlog, so keep an eye out for new indie insights in the coming weeks. And until next time, take it easy.